If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com, that's HECS hunting.com, and use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system. If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com, that's HECS hunting.com, and use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the Hunting Stories podcast, The Hunter's Brief, your quick conservation-minded roundup of the past 2 weeks since I missed last week. Sorry about that. But today we're going to hit the Idaho Fish and Game Commissioner facing poaching charges, Colorado's wolf program asking for more funding while translocation is actually paused, and a big federal push that could open over 1 million acres of California's public lands and mineral estate to drilling. We also hit National Park Service move to expand highly managed volunteer removal programs for invasive species, a federal public comment window tied to experimental population permits, and data collection, and quick fact check corner on the viral genetically engineered ticks that you may have seen a lot about. A lot of information here, guys. So, all right, coffee up, boots on. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the one that's been bouncing around a little bit on social media. The claim that Bill Gates is investigating in genetically engineered ticks that make people allergic to meat. Here's what's solid and what isn't. Alpha-gal syndrome, it is a real thing. It's a delayed allergy to mammal meat products that can be triggered by certain tick bites, most commonly associated in the U.S. with the Lone Star tick. But the claim tying U.S. meat allergies to a Gates-funded genetically modified tick, that project is rated false by most major fact checkers. They point out that the referenced research involves cattle ticks, not the Lone Star tick, and that the work was described as lab limited, not some kind of released program targeting humans. So it matters for hunters because, well, misinformation, it spreads faster than a tailgate rumor in elk camp, and it can drown out the real practical stuff like tick awareness, prevention, and recognizing alpha-gal syndrome symptoms if you're a high-risk region. If there's one engineered thing you should fear in the woods, it's a tick's ability to find that only patch of warm skin that you forgot to treat. In Idaho, Fish and Game Commissioner Brody Harshbarger has pleaded not guilty to a slate of misdemeanor hunting-related charges tied to a December 2025 incident in Fremont County. Reporting indicates investigators allege 2 elk were illegally shot and left unrecovered/abandoned, with allegations including issues like shooting from a roadway, hunting without a valid tag, and failure to make a reasonable effort to retrieve. This one hits different, because commissioners help set the rules and direction for wildlife management. Regardless of anyone's politics or agency frustrations, the public trust side of wildlife management only works when accountability runs uphill as well as down. This matters because, well, when leadership is accused of violating the rules, it fuels cynicism. And cynicism is rocket fuel for bad policy, anti-hunting narratives, and lower public buy-in for science-based management. If you're going to be the rule maker, you really can't be out there role-playing. How not to hunt 101. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is asking for $450,000 in general funds for wolf relocation efforts in the 2026-27 budget, nearly double what it spent the prior year, despite having paused bringing in more wolves this past winter. The reporting frames this as planning for future capture scenarios that may be more complex due to weather and logistics. The pause itself is largely about supply and constraints. Colorado has had trouble getting additional source wolves, and there have been federal and interstate restrictions on where wolves can come from. The same reporting notes survival and mortality concerns from earlier translocations, numbers that keep this program under a microscope from all sides. This matters because whether you support or oppose wolf reintroduction, budgeting through a pause raises questions. Is the state preparing responsibly for the next operational window or spending ahead of certainty? The debate will shape future funding fights, conflict mitigation resources, and public tolerance. Nothing says Colorado like arguing about wolves while the paperwork is still trying to track down a wolf. Multiple reports say the Trump administration is moving forward on proposals that could open over 1 million acres of federal public lands and mineral estate in California to oil and gas leasing, some of it near major recreation areas and park-adjacent landscapes. A key nuance is split estate. In some places, the federal government may control underground mineral rights, even where the surface is different ownership, and any development still involves site-specific reviews and industry interest. California Attorney General Rob Bonta submitted comment letters arguing the environmental analyses are inadequate and warning about public health and pollution impacts across multiple counties. Meanwhile, conservation groups are rallying opposition and pointing to high public comment volume. This matters because regardless of where you sit politically, hunters and anglers should care because energy development can reshape access, habitat fragmentation, road networks, and the long-term quality of public land recreation, sometimes for better access, sometimes for worse. Split estate is the government version of a buddy saying, "You can hunt my place, just don't touch anything, go anywhere, or make a sound." Colorado's SB 25-053, the Protect Wild Bison, classifies bison as wildlife big game unless they're classified as livestock, and it makes hunting or taking a wild bison illegal unless authorized by rule of the Parks and Wildlife Commission. In other words, it's not a blanket forever ban that the governor has put in place here in Colorado, but it does close the door on casual, unregulated killing and puts any hunt authority behind CPW Commission rules. CPW has also talked about building a bison roster, basically a readiness list, so if management removals become necessary, the state can select hunters rather than establishing a regular season. This matters because it's a classic North American model question. How do you protect a rare, free-ranging resource while preserving the idea that regulated hunting can be a management tool, not an anything-goes free-for-all? Colorado didn't say never. It said, not unless, the commission says so. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service opened a public comment window connected to information collection requirements for experimental populations under ESA Section 10J, including items tied to the Colorado Gray Wolf Experimental Population Framework and other 10J contexts, like grizzly NEP-related collection. Basically, the Federal Register posting describe incident reporting and other tracking used to assess program success and recovery outcomes. This isn't the splashiest headline, guys, but it matters because data rules shape what gets counted, how conflicts are documented, and what success looks like on paper, especially for politically hot species. This matters because if you want wildlife management that's defensible and science-based, the boring plumbing definitions, reporting categories, and timelines often decides the real-world outcomes. Nothing says wildlife like a 10J docket number and a grown adult whispering, "Where do I submit the comment?" The National Parks Service announced expanded opportunities for qualified volunteers and permitted participants to assist with invasive and overabundant species management at Jean Lafitte National Historic Park and Preserve, which is in Louisiana, and Cumberland Island National Seashore, which is in Georgia. Target species like nutria and feral hogs specifically. NPS describes this as part of a broader management tool that can include controlled hunting, trapping, and targeted removal under supervision and protocols. Outdoor media coverage emphasized a key point. NPS doesn't want this casually framed as an open public hunting. These are structured, directed management actions using qualified participants. This matters because invasive species control is habitat work. If you ever watched, hog rooting tear up wetlands or seen nutria damage, you already know this isn't about sport. It's about saving what native species need to survive. If you've always wanted to put wetland defender on your resume, congratulations. There's a Park Service spreadsheet with your name on it. California wildlife officers arrested 4 individuals tied to a multi-year deer poaching investigation across deer zones D7, D8, and D9, which is Fresno, Tulare, and Kern regions. Reports cite suspected illegal take of around 30 deer over 3 years, including allegations of spotlighting, out-of-season kills, and tag reuse, including one tag reportedly used multiple times and then duplicated and used again. Search warrants reportedly turned up deer parts, processed venison, and even an unserialized firearm with canine support involved in the operation. The case was referred to the Tulare County DA for prosecution, and the investigation was supported by public tips. This matters because beyond the obvious ethical rot, tag fraud trashes harvest data. The stuff states use to set quotas, seasons, and opportunity for the honest hunter who is doing it right. Reusing tags like this is wildlife crime version of putting duct tape over your truck's odometer and claiming it has low miles. A Wyoming case out of Cody made waves with reporting describing game wardens tracking a serial poacher connected to multiple deer killed and left to waste in town using stakeouts, evidence work, and forensic follow-up. The coverage cites Wyoming Game and Fish details about deer being killed in populated areas and the investigation tightening over time. This is the kind of story that reminds everyone why wildlife law enforcement matters. The public sees the carcass, the waste, the safety issues, and they decide what they think of hunting based on that. This matters because urban and the edge of town poaching creates a public backlash fast. And that backlash doesn't land on the poacher, it lands on the lawful hunters and the agencies trying to manage public tolerance. If you're hunting next to the library, buddy, that's not a hunt, that's a crime scene with streetlights. Just a quick policy hit here, just barely outside the window here that I'm trying to cover, but it's relevant. Rep. Jeff Crank's office says that the House voted for H.R. 556, the Protecting Access for Hunters and Anglers Act, which would prohibit interior and agriculture from banning traditional lead ammo or tackle on federal lands and waters. Supporters frame it as protecting affordability and access. Opponents generally argue lead has well-documented wildlife impacts in certain contexts and should be reduced where it harms scavengers and ecosystems. It's worth watching this, how this all evolves, because even if you're 100% pro-lead today, the policy fight is really about who decides, where, and based on what science. This matters, again, because this could shape future refuge, forest, and public land rulemaking, and it sits right at the crossroads of tradition, cost, and wildlife toxicology. This one's like arguing calibers at deer camp. Nobody changes their mind, but everybody gets louder. That's your Hunter's Brief for the last 2 weeks. Again, sorry I missed last week. Life's busy. Got a 4-month-old. What can I do? But again, we covered today roughly March 19th through April 2nd. If there's one theme today, it's that wildlife management is always a blend of biology, budgets, and human behavior. And the human behavior part is usually the messiest. If you enjoyed this rundown, share it with your hunting buddy who still thinks public comment is what happens when you miss a shot and your friends won't let it go. And don't forget to check out our Monday storytelling episode. As always, hunt ethical, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next brief.